Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Josephine, and I'm the community manager of Goodwings. And I'm very happy to welcome you today to this webinar from solar to SAF that Goodwings is hosting. So today we're going to be talking about, just a sec. Today we'll discuss some of the most pressing issues in the climate debate: the decarbonization of the aviation industry, and also the transition from fossil fuels to renewables. But before we get into this conversation, I want to introduce you to today's speakers. So first we have Ingmar Rensock, who is the CEO and founder of We Don't Have Time. We have Nicolas Guillaume, who is the Renewable Aviation Partnerships Manager at Neste. And we have Christian Müller-Holst, the CEO and founder of Goodwings. And on another note, we're also celebrating a milestone in the partnership between Neste and Goodwings today, because Goodwings is the first travel management company to incorporate the option of sustainable aviation fuel in our booking system, which means we enable our clients to mitigate their emissions and fly more sustainable with Neste's MySAF. And I'm sure that Nicholas will want to talk a lot more about MySAF in a second. But just to get back to the topic for today, why are we talking about the transition to fossil fuel and to renewables, and from fossil fuels to renewables, and why we're talking about hockey stick growth? So we're talking about it, obviously, because climate change is not linear. The planet's trajectory is changing very fast, and if you want to keep up, linear change simply won't be enough. We need exponential change. We need explosive change for this to happen, and we need change in the systems and societies to keep pace with climate change. And this change needs to happen everywhere, but especially in the transition from fossil fuels to renewables, and especially in the aviation industry. So we're here to talk about hockey stick growth, but in a different context than usual. In the cases of technology adoption and global health, we usually see a pattern of these kind of bursts of substantial, not progression emerge. And also in the case of wind and solar energy specifically, we've seen how fast these things can accelerate and how fast we can accelerate the transition to renewable energy. So we've seen it happen. We know it can work. We can do it again, but how do we do that? How do we replicate that into other sources? So this is not a conversation about new technologies that will change the trajectory of climate change like magic. Just if we wait long enough. It's a talk about the solutions that we already have now and how we can accelerate them and make them affordable and operational. And lastly, if this transition is possible, then who's going to lead it? We can't really rely on oil and gas companies to head this change, as they're doing everything they can to slow down any real transition to renewables and sustainable systems. We all know that they have a lot of excuses. It's too expensive. They're making plans and then rolling them back. So who's going to do it? We can't really rely on governments alone to lead the transition either. But on the other hand, we're seeing a lot of positive change right now. We're seeing Emmanuel Macron rolling out an ecological plan to end France's use of fossil fuels by 2030. And at the opening ceremony of this year's New York Climate Week, we saw Governor Gavin Newsom, announce that we will sign Senate Bill 253, just remembering it right, which is a climate bill that will make it a legal requirement for big companies in California, like Google, Apple, to start reporting on their value chain emission. And what this means is that every company in their value chain will have to start reporting as well. So it's big change, and it's big of it's a part of a bigger wave that's coming on now, where Scope 3, which is the emissions from supply chains, from business travel and more, is gaining momentum in the climate debate, because businesses are realizing that they also have a part to play in the green transition. So with this short introduction, I want to start off with you, Ingmar. Let me see if I can get you on the screen here. Hello.
Hello.
So I want to start and ask you, and welcome. I want to start this conversation off with you because I know that you just attended New York Climate Week. And I want to know, first of all, how was the atmosphere? And how is the conversation in that kind of environment around fossil fuels and renewables?
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me to this webinar. First, I will say the reason why I was able to go to New York was actually because of sustainable biofuel. I didn't fly on fossil fuel. I fly there by biofuel. It's not perfect, but it's so much better. And the best thing with it is that I'm not funneling any money to the fossil fuel industry. And I'm not receiving any subsidies from taxpayers. I pay for my own travel. So it was very special for me to be in New York, because we have a US part of the Wheel of Time that I have never visited on the ground. So it was the first time I met with my colleagues on the ground in the United States, and we did a lot of activities there. To answer the question, what was kind of the atmosphere, I will say it was angry, optimistic. It becoming the frustration out of the solutions business community are growing, I will say. And this is a good thing, because this means that it's a little bit like shaking a champagne bottle. And the only thing we need in order to really get disruptive change is to pop that cork. And what was growing in New York is a mind shift, a shift of narrative, I will say. For the first time, it became mainstream to say that the main problem of the climate crisis are caused by the fossil fuel industry. And it's not just that they are the ones that are responsible for most of the greenhouse gases. It's that they are actively working to resist change. So in order to get that champagne cork bottle up, we need to address the cork. We need to unscrew the cork. And when you had leaders there, I mean, business leaders and also the California governor, they were kind of having those very activistic speeches about this topic. And the applause in the audiences, they were unprecedented. This is what people want. We haven't seen this leadership before. And I think it's partly because it's not easy to challenge the most powerful interests in the world. And you can't do it alone. But now it's coming to a critical mass of business leaders and some courage politicians like the Californian governor and Al Gore and others that are daring to challenge this power. And I would like to quote Johan Rockström, that was one of those events where he, I mean, for once he talked about the problem, and we all know that the climate crisis are much worse when we expect. I mean, the climate crisis are playing out exponentially. We have reached beyond 1.5 degree in both July and August, probably even for September. So we are very, very close to reach over 1.5 on a yearly target, and we all see the consequences. So Rockström talked a lot about the planetary crisis we actually are in, but he also gave this fantastic speech that is on exactly what I agree on, and that is what we see now is the final battle, where we see the fossil fuel industry, they're trying to cling on everything they have in order to still be in power. So they resist more than ever. but this is going to end. I mean, we can't. I mean, a lie can never win over the truth. And now when people are coming together, I mean, I even saw high-level business leaders in demonstration about ending fossil fuel, taking selfies. This was unthinkable just a couple of years ago, or even last year. So the champagne bottle is really brewing. It's a lot of frustration out there. And the political people, some are walking in the right direction, but unfortunately some are resisting. They are joining this last battle. I will say UK is a real embarrassment for the world, where they, during the climate week, they actually announced that they will postpone their climate targets. And the business community, they are really, really fed up and angry about that. So what I see, the conclusion is, for the very first time in the business community, fossil fuel have become toxic, totally. And this will have ripple effects. And this is the biggest argument why fossil-free solution like SAF is not emission, is the fact that you don't need to sponsor the companies that are actually behind that we are not moving fast enough.
Thank you so much for this insight, Ingmar. It's super interesting to hear, like, from the inside of an event such as New York Climate Week, what's actually happening, like what is the latest trends. And it's super interesting to hear that we have CEOs joining those. It's good news, I think. I hope we'll have a shake the bottle effect soon. So now I want to go on to our next speaker, Nicholas. Welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you.
You work on partnerships with Neste's renewable aviation team. We're happy to have you on this conversation. Can you briefly introduce us to Neste's renewable aviation program and how you're working with partners to accelerate the transition towards sustainable air travel?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, super happy to be here. And also for Ingmar flying on sustainable aviation fuels to New York, I think is really a nice showcase how you can still fly and be at some important events or travels and still go sustainable. And obviously also recently we had the announcement with Goodwings, where we partnered together with Goodwings via Squake to make renewable aviation fuels more accessible for customers. For the people that don't know Neste, actually we have a fossil background, but more than 20 years ago we went all the way for the renewable space. So right now we're focusing on the sustainable aviation fuels, but also renewable road transport, plastics, and renewable marine fuels. So quite a diverse portfolio in there. But here today, and in my role, I talk mostly about the aviation space, where I focus on. And as we all know, the aviation space is a very hard to decarbonize sector. The industry is growing, especially over the coming 20 years. We see perhaps a doubling of the movements. So it means also that the emissions are growing. At the same time, new technologies like electric flying and hydrogen, they will come in the future, but till 2050, it will not be enough to even bend the curve down for lower emissions. So there, SAF will be the key element, and more than 60 to 70% of the emission reduction should come from sustainable aviation fuels. So therefore, Neste is really focusing on this. We have been producing it since 2011, and now we're really in the scale phase to make as much as possible in the near future to use existing technologies and obviously supply chains to really make this industry more and more sustainable. For people that are less familiar, what is sustainable aviation fuels and where is it made from? So we use waste and residue materials to produce this sustainable aviation fuels, such as used cooking oils. It leads to a roughly an 80% emission reduction, because what we do is actually keep fossil fuels on the ground, right? So we don't want to be reliable on any fossil input anymore to create these sustainable aviation fuels. Obviously, in the long term, we are also looking at different pathways, such as power to liquids, novel vegetable oils, but also there we see some challenges where, as we require a lot of green electricity, for example, to make power to liquids. So right now we really focus on the waste and residue streams and use existing technology, proven technology, to scale this up. And that is, I think, what we should do, and also where we should focus up in the coming years to make a change and really bend that curve down, right? That's where we aim from. And therefore, I'm really happy that we also have this partnership with Goodwings, and that we actually get this product closer to the end customers, right? As we know, we can do a little bit with the politics, but which is not always as reliable as we think, as we see in the UK right now. But what we really need is a lot of voluntary action. And that's where we focus on. So therefore, we try to get the sustainable aviation fuels as close as possible to the end customers, so they can make choices, well-educated choices. But we should also make sure that all together, and I think where Christian of Goodwings and Ingmar are very good in as well, to get education with the leaders in the sector, with the end customer. I think we have to do a lot of education to make sure that people start knowing what it is and really use it, because it is easy in the end, right? It is. It will become easier and easier, especially with solutions like Goodwings, to use sustainable aviation fuels.
I think it's a really good point that you bring up here, that it needs to get to the customer. Like, we need to make it more accessible. We need to funnel that change to be so easy a step that they don't have to think about it. And with that, I want to introduce you to our third and last speaker. Hello, Christian.
Hello.
Christian is the CEO of Goodwings, and I want to start with a question for you, Christian. I want to ask you, why do you think businesses should be interested in this transition to renewables? Why is this interesting to them? And I also want to hear your thoughts on all this system change that we're talking about. What's needed, and how can we enable businesses, like Nicholas was talking about? How can we enable them to accelerate this transition?
Systems change. How long time do I have? But I mean, that's the key. It's the key. It's changing the system, and the system includes the subsidies. It includes the infrastructure, the engines, or at least before I heard about SAF, the business models, the mindset, the level of education and awareness. And fundamentally, we need to change most of that if we are to curb emissions. That means we need to develop or start using existing technologies. The first time I heard about SAF, Nicholas, you just mentioned that I think you started production in 2011. I might be mistaken, but I think I heard that SAF was the first airplane that flew on SAF was in 2008. We're talking 15 years. I mean, and it still accounts for 0.1% of global jet fuel consumption, which is, it's insane when it's available. And increasingly, businesses are wanting to increase their adoption of SAF, start flying on SAF to reduce emissions. They're refraining from it because of mindset. It's not cost. It is costly, yes, but you can't afford it. Most companies can't afford it. It's accessibility. It's lack of budgets, and obviously, you don't want to go in fight with any CFO. So I understand lack of budgets is can kill even the best ideas. So that's, you tapped a little bit into it earlier, Nicholas. That's our role. I mean, our role is to make it mainstream by introducing a way of paying for it. So we essentially offer a whole new budget for businesses that enables them to start reducing their travel emissions. The most beautiful thing is, I know everybody is talking EU regulation. The most beautiful thing right now is it does not only impact climate change positively, it impacts your business positively. I had two of our biggest clients calling me, the CEO of each of those companies called me between Christmas and New Year's, asking for me to deliver some level of documentation because they were not able to win business if they couldn't show that they were using Goodwings as one of their services that were in place to mitigate emissions. It's licensed to operate. If you want to attract talent, capital, partners, business, you need to demonstrate real climate action, not 2030, 2050 pledges, but here and now reductions. And there is money to be made in travel. Unlike what most travel executives will tell you, it's a low margin business. Yes, it's true. The problem is most of that money is being spent on big ad spending or big organizations, leaving no room for any travel companies to really take their share of the responsibility. They're selling carbon intensive services, and they're not even educating their clients about the option of swapping out fossil jet fuel with SAF. I mean, a few companies have begun within the last 6 months, but they're not taking any of the cost. They're not co-financing it. Our role is to do exactly that. It's the only way to make it mainstream. Accessibility, affordability. What we do very shortly is from a philosophy of not wanting to profit from travel, we allocate all our booking commission to a dedicated climate account per client. That money is then used to invest in SAF so we can bring down the cost. In many cases, we're now co-financing because our clients are saying, well, if you can reduce our emissions by 20%, we'll happily pay the additional 20% so we can get to 40% travel emission reductions year on year. I think that in many industries, not just in travel, is the way forward. You need to decouple your own growth with emissions. Otherwise, it'll just be nice glossary paper on a fossil gift. But the minute you can make more money by enabling your clients to reduce emissions, that's where the magic happens. And I'm extremely happy about our partnership, Nicholas, with you and Suzanne and the entire Neste team, and also with Squake enabling this for us. So, yeah, looking forward to what's ahead.
And I think this is a really good point to start the discussion. So I want to start off by thanking all of you. I want to ask, and maybe this is mostly a question for Nicholas, what do you think it requires from individuals and businesses for us to get this hockey stick effect for sustainable aviation fuel? What do you think is the biggest barrier to scaling it?
Yeah, if you ask me that question, like there's always a question in the industry around the demand and supply, and I think many people like to say there's not enough supply in the short term. But I think what we should really aim for is long-term demand. I think that's the most important thing that we see, that businesses put the money where their mouth is, right? So if you make an say, okay, by 2040, 2050, you want to be net zero. It's a nice thing to say, but what really helps is that people also start doing something, right? So maybe not 100% of their emissions reduced by SAF, but maybe start doing 10%, 20%, making small steps to show the industry, hey, we're actually doing it and making contributions to it, which allows for us as producers to make additional investments above any regulatory needs, right? Obviously, we get a Refuel EU, we get a few percent SAF blending obligatory, but we should go beyond that and accelerate it. And that's where we really need people to make these conscious decisions and help us from now on, because then we can start planning for the next expansion, next plant, right? So we're growing already fast, but I think the industry needs much more of people showing that they're actually willing to pay for it and really and happy to contribute to fly sustainable, like Ingmar did to New York. So that is a great example.
I think we're back to the conversation and the praise of all the CEOs who are willing to stand for something and like put their money where their mouth is, be a part of this transition. But Christian, I think, what do you think, like, so this is a good example, like the partnership between Neste, Squake, and Goodwings, where we have the whole value chain of you get the reporting, you get the buying of biofuel directly where you book your travel. But how do you see that this can help, or like solutions like this can help businesses invest in this transition? And how can we make it even more affordable?
The only way to make it more affordable is to start buying it. The more demand, the more production volumes, the lower the price. We know that from theory, and practice. So we should have started 15 years ago. So we have a big job to do today. The business as an influencer, I think, is also not to be underestimated, because a lot of the companies that use Goodwings, they also come to us not just because we provide data reporting and access to SAF paid for by us, but also because it's a part of their education of their workforce. We have a company with 800 architects. Every time they're booking, a trip with us, they're being educated on emissions and what SAF is and how you can actually use SAF in existing engines and utilize the existing infrastructure, etc., which is also something that most people don't realize. So I think the business has a big role to play for itself, for its industry, and also as an influencing force for its employees, because many of the employees that then go on their personal trips will probably think twice about going to Canada when you could consider going to Norway. The landscape is the same. So the education of our travel footprint, the options available in terms of mitigating, you need to get there from. You need to be educated from someone, and it should be in our school system, but it's not. So it needs to come from somewhere.
So I think maybe Ingmar can pitch in here, because I know that you've been traveling both with biofuel. You've also been traveling a lot with trains, and you're kind of very well known. Your company, We Don't Have Time, for kind of leveraging this force of people gathering around media to provoke change, you could say. So what do you think the role of media is in achieving this hockey stick growth? Do you think there's something to say here? There's something to push towards that you can do?
It's amazing. I didn't know this, but has SAF been around since 2011? And this is crazy. So it's really a brilliant example of that we need to educate policymakers, business leaders, the public, and everyone about the solutions. And we have this shit industry that will try to talk down the solutions. Always come up with the idea that electric cars are as worse as normal cars, and SAF is just a scam or whatever. We need to counterbalance that by educate about the solution. But we also need leadership and a different way of thinking. I don't fully agree with Nicholas and Christian on how to sell SAF. Because for me, I get really, I don't understand a thing when you have this leverage. If I want to choose to buy 20% SAF, 40% or 100%. For me, either I skip it a lot, I skip it totally, or it's 100%. It's not like I want to be supporting the fossil fuel industry with 50% because I can't afford more. If I can't afford more, I stay on the ground. And the thing is here, it's not expensive. It costed me $500 extra to go to New York from Stockholm. $500 in 2 ways. It's nothing for business travel. Everyone can afford it. And if they can't afford it, they should not travel. It's as simple as that. And what really make me, I will say frustrated is that actually I didn't buy this from Goodwings this time. I bought it directly from the SAS airline. They had this when you book the ticket. That's extremely good. They had this choice where I could choose 0% to 100%. Of course, I chose 100%. Why should I choose anything else? Anyway, and I did it. I thought it was really good. And I think SAS deserves a lot of credit for it until I saw the interview on Swedish television with their CEO, where the reporter asked the CEO if he was flying with SAS. And he answered sometimes. When not even the airline CEO are using their own green solutions, we are deep into failing. So we really need new players like Goodwings, challenge those old players because they need to be challenged, because that is really bad leadership.
And I know that, Nicholas, you guys have tested it. A flight can fly completely 100% on SAF if we wanted to. It's viable, it's safe. So why not?
Yeah, I know it's some regulation, etc. But that's one thing. But to give the customer a choice to do only 10% SAF, that is stupid, I believe. Sorry, I know you do that, and I know it's reason for it, but I don't like that part of it. But I like everything else. And I also say that it's great that Neste is one of the few companies that have transformed from a fossil company to a green company, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Hey, Ingmar, I also like your comment. Okay, if you can afford it to pay this a little bit extra for climate, should you travel? I really like it.
Yeah, you could go by train. You could go a shorter distance. It's that simple. And if everyone is going to buy SF, it will be more expensive because the supply will not keep up in short term. And people need to adapt. We need to pay the real cost of travel. I mean, there's no alternative.
I think this is a really good point to round off. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to our speakers. I think this was really, really interesting, very good conversation to have right now. And I hope you got something out of it. But yeah, thank you for today. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.